Good morning. My name is DonnaRae Menard. I'm a local author, and I'm here today to introduce you to my books. I want to thank, first of all, Northwest Television Access for allowing me to be here today. I'm very appreciative. I am what I refer to as a born-in-the-cow flop Vermonter. I am from Heinsberg and Winooski and currently living in Georgia. I came to being an author through the back door. I don't have a lot of training in this. I had a totally different job. In 2008, I was diagnosed with advanced stage 4 squamous carcinoma of the sphincter and given a few months, 6. I ended up at Mary Fletcher Hospital with Dr. Thomas Rowland. And while I was in recovery, he asked me what I had to do, what was on my bucket list that I thought I would like to get done. And under my bed in several banana boxes, I had handwritten manuscripts. And I thought I would like to have one of those books published. He challenged me to get one published, and this is my flagship book, In the Shadow of Pharaoh, and I'll explain that in a moment. I started writing in the late 1960s for self-preservation. I'm the oldest of 11. My mother had passed away shortly after I graduated from high school. I had sisters who were still babies. My father remarried, and I was having a problem adjusting to it, that being my issue, not anybody else's. And I just started writing while I was in high school. I first got noticed when I was a junior in high school, and my local history teacher asked me what I was doing because I seemed to be taking a lot of notes. And what I was writing was disparaging descriptions of other classmates, and I got to read them aloud. That was the beginning of my career as a 50-yard dash runner for high hurdles, which is what I lettered in. But when I started actually looking to publish, I found out that there was a lot of things going on that I didn't know, because I really didn't know anything about the business at all. You don't just sit down and put words on a page. The short part of writing a book is actually writing the book. The long part is getting it edited, finding an agent or a publisher, going through all of those steps. For this book alone, I sent out 400 query letters, and I got a negative response for every single one of them. And for a long time, I held on to them. They were a symbol to myself that I had to take a lot of rejection to get somewhere else. But when I finally did get it published, it was an oddity. And these are all to agents, because everybody told me that I needed to have an agent to publish a book. You do not need to have an agent to publish a book, and I proved it. There are also a lot of ways to get published nowadays. I am a hybrid author, which means I have some books that are self-published, and I have some books that are with publishing houses. When I was no longer able to work, I wasn't allowed to return to work after I came out of treatment, I started looking for something to do. I was too young to be retired, as far as I was concerned. I still had a lot of energy. There were a lot of things I still wanted to do. And Dr. Rowland had challenged me to get a book out there. Like I said, I didn't know what to do. I started checking online. I read 1 million articles, I believe. But nothing really told me what I needed to do. I took some classes at a local college, and I still didn't understand what I needed to do. I guess I'm kind of seat-of-the-pants learner. I had to be out there. So among the things that I found out was that in Dedham, Massachusetts, there was going to be a convention called New England Crime Bake. Dedham was close enough so that I could drive there. It was a 3-day convention. I drove down there. I pulled into the parking garage. I parked way in the back corner. I walked up to the registration desk, and I said to the young lady who was sitting there, I lost my badge. And the woman said, oh, wait a minute, I'll write you a new one. So for 3 days, I went through the convention, going to the seminars, sleeping in my car, eating with the other authors, listening to what people were saying, and I wasn't a registered guest. Now I'm the registrar, just to give you a little warning, I'm the registrar for that same convention, and nobody sneaks past me. While I was there, I was in the lobby while a seminar was going on that I really wasn't interested in. There were two gentlemen talking, and I just wandered over to listen to them, what they were saying. And one of them was this big, tall guy. His name is Bruce Robert Coffin, and he is a published author, but at that point I had no idea who he was. He writes police procedurals. And we just started chatting, and I'm not sure exactly how we got on it, but I started telling him my pig stories. We used to have a 450-pound pet pig, and I started telling him my pig stories. He took me over to a table where there was this woman who was frantically trying to sort out T-shirts and get paraphernalia done, and he said, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine, Harriet Sackler. Miss Sackler was very busy. I offered to help her. We went through, got everything together. While we were talking, I was telling her what I had said to Bruce. She said to me, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. First she said to me, does this pig show up in a book? And I said, actually, she does. And she said, I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine. She introduced me to Verena Rose. These were two of the publishing owners of Level Best books. The third one was Sean Riley, who does all the covers. Before I left that convention that I wasn't even registered to be at, I had a contract with a publisher and no agent for 3 books, and that would be these 3 books. This is Murder in the Meadow, Murder on Eagle Ridge, and Murder in the Village proper. This is the It's Never Too Late series. It happens in the 1970s in a small town called, in my book, Parentville, but it's actually Heinsberg, Vermont. I was told by my cousins I needed to call it something other than Heinsberg, because pretty basically in my books I'm killing my cousins off. The premise to the story is that this young woman whose mother passed away from cancer when she was 3 years old was raised by her maternal grandparents. Her grandfather, her papa, was somebody she adored. He taught her to respect the land, and he taught her a lot about it. And he passed away when she was 13. She had a love-hate relationship with her grandmother, and the day before her 18th birthday, she ran away. 10 years later, a lawyer finds her and notifies her that her grandmother has passed away and she needs to come back and settle the estate. So she comes back to Parentville. Her theory was she was going to sell the property, take the money, go to Hawaii, and party until the money was gone. What ended up happening was that on page 5 of the first book, she meets Ruth Beauregard, and Ruth Beauregard tells her that her grandmother did not die naturally. In true Vermonter fashion, Katie knows that it's okay for her to say anything that she wants about her family, but nobody else better cross that line. The main character is Caitlin Took. She is through all 3 of the books, and Level Best just came back and bought the next 3 books in the series. So in 3 weeks, Murder on the Small Farm will be coming out. There'll be a book every year until the 6 books are done. There's a core of people that follow in every book, and there is a nucleus around them of characters that come and go depending upon the story, though some of them do come back and make cameo appearances in other books. Ruth Beauregard was supposed to be there for 3 paragraphs on the 5th page. She was supposed to pick up her suitcase, walk through the door, and be gone for the rest of the series. She never left. Murder in the Village proper is Caitlin Took dealing with the death of Ruth Beauregard's husband 10 years before, and the fact that the village holds Ruth responsible for George Beauregard's murder. And even though she was proven innocent, it's a small village, it's a small town. Side story to this is that Caitlin's private issue is that she's gay. And in the 1970s, in small town Vermont, you didn't step forward and say that. And it's a secret that she has to keep. It's a secret that she has to hide. And that you find as she goes along, while she's trying to deal with the 17 cats and the crazy old lady that her grandmother left her, how she has to make sure that nobody else finds out about what's going on. These books, the first one I self-published, I had a different series of books. And these were the books that came out. This is the Woman Warrior series. These are historical fictions, which is a historically accurate site and a fictional story. Murder on the Brain. In the Shadow of Pharaoh happens in 22nd century BC Egypt. Strength of the Mayan Leopard is 13th century Mayan. Wu Li is 11th century Chinese Mongolian, which would be the generation before Genghis Khan. These time periods are all time periods that I selected to write these stories in because I had an affinity for them. There seemed to be a lot that I knew before I even got started writing about those particular areas, that particular time period. I have a couple of thrillers. These are the first two in a series of 5. These are also self-published. Patterns and Hunters. And they are books that happen in modern day Boston. I love Boston. I love going down there and just walking around in the city, seeing what's going on. It's my favorite big city. And in these books, you meet Detective Carmine Mansour, who is a young female detective who is brought in and joins a team of 5 male detectives who have worked together for a period of time. They all have their place. It's a situation that we see all too often where a woman is in a job that guys don't believe that she should be in. She has a different theory at looking at the job. They're very cut and paste, black and white. And she likes to sit back and think about what's going on. What could possibly happen besides this, besides which is evident. So she would kind of be classified as a dreamer in the job. She keeps saying her gut says, and they keep saying, no, your gut has no business here. The rules are. There are 3 more books in this series. Evil Contained Within is the next book that will be coming out, and it will be the end of next year. These are self-published. These are with Level Best. This is my first fantasy, and this book, Away from the Warlord, comes with a story, is also with Of Metal and Magic Publishing. So this book is with a publishing company. This was another deal where I wrote the book and didn't bother to get or even look for an agent. I put the book out there to different publishing houses that this is what I had written. Of Metal and Magic was one of the 3 that stepped forward with an interest. I met with these people online via Zoom. We decided we could work best together, and I went with Of Metal and Magic. This book started a long time ago. I would be picking up my grandson, Grayson, and we had a 45-minute commute where we would be talking to each other, and he was just a little kid, and a couple years old. We were talking about wizards, and we would tell a story about a wizard and a dragon and a troll and a small child. And time went on, and eventually we weren't seeing each other so much. And when we worked together, he was not as interested in this book as he was. He had discovered Spider-Man. So I held on to the book, the theory of the book in my mind. And when Grayson was about 10 years old, I sat down and I wrote this book out. It came in at about 130,000 words. And that's when I started looking for a publisher. And when I went to Of Metal and Magic, they told me immediately I had to take out $35K, which was very difficult. When you write to kill your darlings, as my copy editor tells me, is practically the hardest thing to do, is to cut out pieces of your story. Fortunately, the gentleman of Metal and Magic was very good about telling me where he thought I was in overload and explaining to me why I was, so that I could look through the book and find other places that I could trim out. And I find that's a very important point, because even though I have beta readers, when I write a book, a beta reader gets the book, 3 beta readers get a book, and they read the book and they come back to me and they tell me, yes, the story plots, but they don't necessarily do any copy editing. Or I didn't understand this, or in a book that I have that's coming out shortly, I had changed one of the characters' names and hadn't caught all the places. Fortunately, one of the beta readers did, and she came back and said to me, who is Josh and who is Noah, and are they supposed to be the same person? So these are all little things that I'm learning as I go. Every time I talk to somebody, every time I go to a different convention, I learn more and more and more. The Waif and the Warlord is, if you see on the cover, this is my favorite cover of all my books. This is the dragon's eye. This is Moya. She's a red and gold dragon. This is the Waif. The heart of Moya is the little girl. Reese is the little girl. Her country has been wiped out. It was a small, lost in the middle of the desert place. She is the sole survivor. She's given to the warlord as a gift, as a tie, and he puts her in his stable of gladiator children. The idea is that they are an amusement for people of worth, and if they live or die, it doesn't matter. They are worth nothing, these children. And through her relationship with a wizard that she meets, she eventually meets Moya. I'm not sure how much of this I should give to you. And Reese and Moya become one, in that they become their own family. And Reese and Moya are coexisting through the help of each other. Many of these books have other books. Waif and the Warlord has a second book coming out, which is Born in Stone. And that will not be out until 2025. But it follows Reese and Moya through their path. This year already, I have had 3 books that were published. And they are, in January, February, and March, they are books that are self-published. In other words, I pretty much wrote the book. I have a copy editor who is Lisa Matthews with Kill Your Darlings. She keeps me on track. I'll never figure out where all the commas go. I'm just really bad at it. I either put them in or I don't put them in, but she keeps me on track of what's happening. Drop from the Sky is the first in a series of 3, and it's about Gwen Hansen, who is addicted to reading mystery books. When she gets a chance to go to a mystery readers police academy, she is beyond thrilled. Then a body shows up like it was dropped out of the heavens, and her good buddy is somehow involved. But the dead guy had a secret, and now the secret is about to silence Gwen's questions. When she realizes she's overstepped, she has to worry about her friends and who's going to feed her cat if something happens to her. So this is Drop from the Sky. This came out in January. This is the morality issue, and the story behind this is that I actually did this job. And I think it's odd now that the government is trying to figure out what to do with all of the unclaimed remains since COVID, when 30 years ago I was working for a funeral home delivering unclaimed cremated remains for $50 a pop. And in this story, Glenna Woodward has no job, no prospects, and only a few friends. Then she meets Dennis Slater and goes to work for him, delivering urns of cremated and unclaimed remains. It's his morality issue until one urn comes with a tale of road rage and a confused backstory. Glenna has a job, a fledgling sweetie, and a strange man who wants to shut her up. Shots are fired, and who's going to fall to the ground? Is this the career end for the courier of the dead? And at the end of the story, you realize that Dennis Slater's morality issue has become Gwen Hansen's as well. And this is also the first in a series of 3, and the next book coming out in this series is next year, and it is Upon the Shelf. That's the name of the book. This is the last book that I had that came out, and that was March of this year. And this book happens in St. Albans, Vermont, in Taylor Park, at the Ladies of St. Albans Fountain, which we used to call the Goddess Fountain. It took them about 3 years to repair it, and last year they were putting it together, and I walked over and I was checking it out while they were getting ready to put it back, and I thought, wow, this is a perfect place to put a body, which is pretty basically a lot of times how I work. At 2:30 a.m., Lynn Steves caught the quick shine of light on the far side of Taylor Park. She was sure it was nothing, but later the news of a body dump in the fountain reached her. 48 hours later, she walked among the Victorians' home left by the railroad barons and circles of burnout at the top of the great houses. On the far side is a woman in a beautiful Christmas dress, an oddity for late June, but then the woman was dead. That, too, was an oddity. Chief Coon has 2 murders and only one suspect, Lynn Steves. Her killing doesn't track, but her being first on the scene for 2 murders can't be overlooked. Steves knew the homeless man, but professes ignorance of the woman. Coon locks his eagle eye on her. He's adding her to her stress. Steves is the center of a custody battle, already has somebody trying to take her job, a young employee who is being abused, and now a friend from her bank is whispering that someone might be killing to rob. Is the homeless guy connected? What about the woman in the scarlet dress? Coon appears to be following Steves, hoping she'll slip up. If he's not going to look for the real killer, then Steves is going to have to. Suddenly, it's too late to back away. The murderer is dragging her through the garden away from safety. Ask yourself, Lynn Steves, is it your turn to die? So Beneath the Fountain is also the first book in a 3-book series. And the second book is Among the Trees, which will also be out the end of next season. I have children's books behind these, which I didn't bring with me today because I thought maybe I was going to have a lot to talk about. I do a lot of my own marketing, and marketing probably is the hardest part of selling books, because marketing takes a lot of talking. You have to be able to walk into a library or a bookstore, or as I do every Saturday, I'm in Taylor Park. I have my own regular space, and people come along and I introduce myself. Good afternoon, I'm DonnaRae Menard. I'm a local author, and I'd like to introduce you to my books. I do the same thing when I go to libraries. When I had a few books, I would bring all my books and I would talk about all of them. And then I realized that I was pretty basically putting people to sleep in a short time because I can talk really fast. So now I bring a few, In the Shadow of Pharaoh, Murder in the Meadow, and I bring whatever I have as a latest book. There are some people who are very appreciative, very helpful. In St. Albans, I have books that are available besides in the park, available at the Eloquent page. Donna Howard is a very big supporter. She's very good to help me out. Also at Rail City, which is also on Main Street. I have books in other smaller areas surrounding the place and a lot of libraries. I go to a lot of conventions. I talk to a lot of people. I try to work with some of the writers groups that I belong to. I'm a member of Sisters in Crime New England, Sisters in Crime Guppies. I belong to the Vermont League of Writers and Mystery Writers of America. So we do a lot of networking, Periodically, I get to go somewhere else. I was in Killington a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot how far away that was to drive to, like 2.5 hours. I'll be in Jericho in a couple of weeks. I'll be in Williamstown at the end of July doing a mystery making event. If you have a chance to go to something like that, they are awesome, because it's a group of people who are sitting there watching 4 authors who are either taking questions from the audience or selecting slips from fish bowls, and in 3 minutes they have to come up with a 5-minute book. They have to be able to conjure up a book, and even if they're all using the same tags, you get a lot of different stories because everybody's mind works differently. I write because I love to write. I like to put it down. I sell because I love to do it. I love to tell people about the books. People come back to me and they'll say, oh, I read book 1 and I loved it, or I read this one, is there going to be a sequel? Or the biggest question I had with the It's Never Too Late series after the book 1 and book 2 came out was, how come Katie is not dealing with what happened to Ruth? That was supposed to be book 4. The publisher heard all the chatter, came back and said, we want book 3 to be Murder in the Village proper, which is what happens with Ruth's husband, George Beauregard. I think this was the first time I really stood up for myself big time. I said, oh, you didn't buy that book. You know, you bought these 3 books according to my contract. And she asked me how many more books there were, Verena Rose, and I told her that there were 3 more books, and book 4 was Murder in the Village proper. And she said if they could have that book for book 3, they would extend my contract and take 3 more books, which I thought was pretty awesome. And it took a little bit of finagling inside of the books to change some information around, but pretty basically that's what happened. Among the people that are coming into the park, I had a woman that came in this last week to bought book 3. She told me that she was buying it for her father. She said, my mother bought the first 2 books of your series. She could not wait for the 3rd book to come out last summer, but she passed away before the book happened. At her mother's time, her father had a table full of her mother's favorite things, and my first 2 books were on it. And she wanted to buy book 3 for her father because her mother had been waiting for it. And it probably was one of the few stories that absolutely brought me to tears. I have so much more I want to say to you, but in a couple of minutes my time will be done. I want to thank you very much for being here with me today. I want to thank all the people who have helped me out and supported me even when I was being incredibly stupid. My name is DonnaRae Menard. These are my books, and I'd like to introduce them to you.